Okay, so now I'm going to be making a dining room table. It's going to be all poplar. Dimensions is 60 by 33 by 30. This is also going to come with a matching bench, and I'm making it for a client down in North Carolina, so I have a long travel. As you'll see, you take this down to drop it off. So first I'm going to cut off, like all projects, milling up the lumber, and then I'm going to start with the legs here first. So I'm using 8/4 poplar, and I'm going to trim it down and then laminate it. So this is the first step. I usually start with the legs, so I have an idea how thick they'll be if they're milled up, and so I know exactly how long to make the stretchers and aprons. Okay, so like most projects, we start the mill up process like I mentioned. So my steps typically are start with the miter saw, cut the rough length, take over to the jointer, try to get a straight face, at least one straight edge before you take over to the table saw or the planer. Depending on how bad the wood is, and this is common, especially with rough sawn lumber. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you get framing lumber from the lumber yard, it's not straight, but it's usually not beat up as much as, rough, fresh cut wood. So this wood's dry, but it's from a sawmill. So it definitely takes a lot of milling up and clean up. And these are the legs I'm cutting up now, and I'll be laminating these, and that's the idea there. So I want to get them to the measurements roughly that I want, a little big, so when I put them in the planer and joiner, it will kind of get them to the final size, which I'm looking for, which is about 3.5 by 2.5 inches, I believe, when it's all said and done. Okay, so while I'm waiting for the legs to laminate, I'm going to start cutting up the wood for the top and also the aprons and stretchers. That's my next step here. So these are top pieces. I'm going to cut them at rough length and start to get them ready. So I'm going to be bouncing around a lot in this video, just so I could get everything, because I try to use my time as best possible, since I have a little bit of a deadline on this project and I have to a little bit of travel. So the top is, I'm sorry, these are legs. They're laminated. So we're going to take them off. So now I'm just getting a center point here on this piece of, I think it's 6/4 poplar, and I'm going to be using this for the stretchers and aprons. So I'm just going to mill it up real quick, and that's this step here. So we're going to cut it to rough width here on the table saw, then we'll run it through the rest of the process of planer, jointer, everything else.
Okay, so that's all the lumber just for the table, and we're going to mill up some lumber for the matching bench. So the legs won't be as thick as the table, but they'll be a little thicker than average. But it's going to be a little smaller dimensions, obviously. So we're going to also make one bench, but this is all the poplar for the table itself. So we have a lot of milling up to do. So we had the rough cuts, and now we have to really, especially the top, have a lot of milling up.
So we're back to the tabletop. So it's very important to get straight edges for the wood for the top, because you have to laminate this and you don't want any gaps if possible. I know it's not always 100% perfect, so that's why people use the glue and sawdust trick. But I try to get as straight as possible. I use the jointer, which is tough, especially with a bench top joiner with long pieces like this. And the planer, gets the final thickness, but I also use this table saw jig, and that helps to get straight edges for final lamination at the top. Now back to the legs. We're doing the final mill up of the legs after glue up, and we want to make sure we get these as smooth as possible. And you know, even though we're gonna be painting and staining this table, you don't want too many imperfections.
So most of the wood is pretty much milled up here. So now we're going to cut these legs down to the final length. Since they're laminated, we're going to clean these up now on the miter saw, and then these will be ready to start sanding. And we're also going to run through the router table, get a chamfer on each edge, bottoms for the tops, and all four sides for each leg. All right, so that's going to be the next 2 steps, and sanded, so 3 steps. You see I have a couple of tiny little gaps here. Now I'm going to be painting this, so you won't really see it, but I'm going to still fill it in with some putty and maybe even some old wood shaving with some glue. Not too bad though, I'm not going to go crazy. Just to see if I can seal it up a little bit. Even though like I said, I'm going to be painting it and primer it first, but we'll just do it anyway just to keep it somewhat clean. Also, if there's any little divots or anything like that, we'll just kind of fill them in. Alright, so let's do that now.
So now it's time for the the glue up of the top. So the top I'm going to end up gluing up in 2 phases here. So since there's 4 boards and they're going to be about 16.5 inches each in width when glued up. So I'm just going to, I was going to do 1 big glue up, but I just think it's safer to do it just in 2 glue ups here. And then we'll glue up the 2 pieces at the end after they drying up. So I'm just using biscuits here, glue, and evenly clamp pressure with some coals. So that's what I'm doing here. So it's just 2-step process. It will be a 3-step process ultimately, but we're doing the first 2 glue ups now. Okay, so just a few hours later, you can see it's pretty late at night, and now I'm going to do the final glue up of the 2 big pieces with the bigger parallel clamps and pipe clamps just to get everything glued up. I'm also going to be using cauls and just trying to do as evenly pressure as possible. That way we don't have any bowing or anything like that, which is tough on big glue ups, I guess, especially with rough sawn wood. Even though you can melt it up, it's still a process. Okay, so that's the next day. We're going to pull the top out of the clamps and put that to the side for now, and we're going to start working on the rest of the table frame. Okay, so now this step we were going to start marking where we're going to be placing the dominoes. So we're getting our reference lines here, and we're going to wrap all the way around the legs and also on the stretchers and aprons. We're just going to mark them. We're just going to put them towards the center. So I'm going to be using 2 dominoes for each apron and stretcher, and then we'll go into correspond to the legs. But also have a little bit of a reveal. So that always makes it a little tricky. So that's this step here right now. A little tip here with the domino, the Festool Domino. So if you have your dial here, so for the legs, I'm going to move the dial up to make it a little bit bigger to give it a little wiggle room. So when you put those dominoes in, you can move it around just enough to make it sure everything's even. So that's the step I'm doing here. So now it's time that we're going to dry fit the side stretchers and aprons here. Well, these are going to be the stretchers. So we're going to just do a dry fitting real quick here, just to make sure everything lines up, and before we do final glue up. Okay, so now that we dry fitted everything, everything looks good, we're going to do the glue up. And to start, I just did the glue up on the side frame. And I do that because I wanted to let it dry for a little bit, let the glue dry for about an hour or two. The weather's not too bad right now, so the glue will dry pretty quick. So I'm using Type Bond 3, and it has a pretty good dry time. So we're just going to clamp this up, these 2 side pieces, and we'll let them sit for a little bit, and then we'll move on to other parts of the table. Okay, so it's later in the day, so now we're going to connect the front and back stretchers here and aprons. So we're going to connect the whole table together, in other words here. So we're going to be using the glue and the dominoes, of course, and we're using longer clamps. Unfortunately, I don't have one long 72-inch clamp right now, so I have to combine 2 clamps on the far end here. You'll see ultimately. On the other side, I use the bigger 72-inch clamp, which definitely I'm going to have to go get another one of these. They're hard to get though, at least for me. They're hard to find. I'm going to have to make some pipe ones possibly. But I like the parallel type long clamps if I can find them. They're just not easy to find right now, it seems like. So that's what we're doing here. So we're just going to connect this, make sure everything looks good. Nice clamp impression. We'll let this sit for a couple hours, let it dry. Okay, so the next step I'm going to do, I'm going to cut some extra pieces here, and these are going to be for corner brackets I'm going to make. The corner brackets will be connected with countersink holes, and they'll be cut at 45-degree angles, and also put a hole in the center just to connect to the legs. So what happens here is they will connect each frame piece together. As you see here, I'm going to set the angle, and I'm going to cut these. This is kind of a dangerous cut with these small pieces of wood, so I go real slow here, and I hold on tight, but I also, I will let go if the thing starts jumping on me here without the fence set up. But this works out pretty well, and it helps fortify the frame, keep everything together. Especially, I have to move this thing into my truck and take it to North Carolina on the trip. So I want to make sure this thing's nice and sturdy and not going to move at all. But that's very important. You don't want a wobbly table if possible. So I'm just going to, like I said, countersink some holes and put some trim head screws in there. And for the center one that I'll do later in the video, I'm just going to use a little bit of a bigger screw. You could use a lag bolt too, or like a nut. And I've done that in the past, but I'm not taking this apart. This is going to just stay together. So I use that if I'm going to be collapsing the legs, which this is not going to be doing, since everything's directly connected to the legs, the dominoes. So these corner brackets are strictly for, hold everything together. So the next step here is I'm going to be getting my my bracket pieces, which are going to be the braces for the center of the table. They're actually not going to be center, they're going to be 16 inches off each edge approximately, and we're just going to put 2 in, one on each side. And I'm going to use pocket holes for these, and I'd like to use pocket holes because in case I have to cut this wood a little short to sink the frames in, to kind of pull them in to square them up. Even though this table is very square, I could have used dominoes, put them together. But this just gives a little more extra strength, and I'd like to have some kind of screws, just in case. Like I said, this thing has to get moved around a lot, so that's the step we're at now. Okay, so now I'm going to start sanding, everybody's favorite part of the project. I did sand these earlier before I ran it around the table, but I'm just going to sand now again up to 120 grit. So also here I'm going to break the feet here with a little chamfer on the bottom of the legs, and we'll sand that smooth also after I move out these little chamfers in here. Okay, so I'm going to be putting feet on this table. Most big tables like this, I try to put feet on. Even if I don't put it in, I just have them prepared for it just in case they need them, since I'm not sure what kind of floor it's going on and what kind of floor, if it's going to be level or not. So the process for this is, it's kind of a common practice for people. I learned this off of YouTube. So I just I just drill in a hole. I think this is a 5/8 inch bit, and I tape it off where I want it to measure up to with the feet. And I also will use a Forstner bit, which I believe is a 1/2 inch Forstner bit here, to burrow out that hole, as you see here. That's what I'm doing now. So that way you can kind of hide the feet as much as possible. And if they don't need them, you could kind of screw them in all the way, and they just kind of just hidden. Because sometimes the look of feet on the bottom of a table kind of looks like a washer and dryer. I'm not crazy about it. So I'm just tapping them in here, and we're going to do one leg real quick, and then we'll do the rest. Okay, so now I'm back to the top. So I want to get one straight edge here. And then we are going to cut both edges just to clean it up, clean the top up before we start sanding and routing the chamfers on the edges and everything like that. So this is the step here. I'm just going to cut each edge just to get it nice and square, and then we'll clean up this tabletop real good. And that's the step here. You know, like I said, the funnest part, a lot of sanding coming up. So I start with a 80 grit belt sander, and then I will go to a 80 grit orbital sander, and then I'll go to 120 grit, and then it'll go up to ultimately about 220 grit, depending on, you know, if I see scratches or anything like that. So also here we're running a chamfer on each edge of the bottom and the top of this table. I don't go too aggressive here, but it goes just a nice little touch to make your stuff look pretty professional. And you know, it is professional because, you know, you're selling this stuff. So if you're selling this stuff, you want to, you know, put the nice little touch like this on your projects. Okay, so the next step here is we're going to be primer and painting this table frame. So the color scheme is going to be white frame, which I'll do about 2 to 3 coats and a little light sanding in between. And the top it's going to be a weathered oak, which is a pretty nice color. It has like a kind of a gray, brownish tint to it. So while I painted everything, so now I'm going to start with the bench. And this is pretty much the same steps. The only difference with the bench is going to be a little smaller, and I'm going to be using pocket screws for the joinery of this, because I want this to be really strong. You know, people are sitting on it and stuff like that. You want it to be, you know, pretty sturdy. So we're going to be using pockets for this, and that's the step right now. I'm speeding through this because it's kind of the same process. Otherwise, it's going to look identical except smaller than the table. So that's the step right here, and we're just going to put this together, make sure everything's nice and square and sturdy, and that's about it. So this project's, you know, kind of getting towards the end here. Okay, so now here I'm going to stain the top of the table and the bench. This is going to be the weathered oak. So I just put a little coat on, then I just wipe off with a dry cloth on the bottoms and the top. And I didn't show this, but I also put 3 coats of polyurethane on and did a light sand in between each coat. So I'm also going to countersink some holes in the bottoms of the bench and the top, just so I can, on the long grain only, for mounting the top when I get to North Carolina, which that's where I'm at now. I had to drive it down, and here it is. It's done. I'm going to meet the customer and drop it off today. And thanks for watching. Hope you like, and hope it helps you build stuff.